So Leader Tony McCombie of the House Republicans, thank you for joining SUAA today. This is part of our Q&A series where we have our SUAA members send in questions, and Leader McCombie has graciously decided to sit down with us and answer those questions from our members. And one of the most pressing issues right now for SUAA members and other retirees is the issue of health care. I think the vast majority of our members are happy with the Trail Medicare Advantage plan, but about 30% are not. They're not able to go to the Mayo Clinic, for example. More and more hospitals are dropping coverage. One member asked regarding this contract with Aetna that CMS signed, shouldn't they be able to see what's in the contract in the name of transparency? And just to add on to that, what, if anything, can the legislature do to add more healthcare options for retirees, whether it's more options for advantage plans or a supplemental? Is there anything the legislature can do to increase transparency of this process, as well as increase the options available for retiree healthcare?
Yeah, I think healthcare, obviously seniors are those getting ready, especially to approach retirement or are retired right now. Their budget is their budget. And the increased cost of healthcare, unfortunately, the Affordable Care Act may not have been, the right answer or the right path, which is okay because we make a lot of bad decisions in government. The question is, do you go forward to remedy it? And on the federal side, from my understanding, there is bipartisan conversations and support to be able to find the best healthcare options, especially for our retirees and senior population. It's our turn to take care of them. And as folks are either avoiding healthcare because of the cost, as somebody who's still in the working environment, their health can get worse, and by the time they get to that place, they do need that specialized care. So I think it's a real big topic for discussion. From my understanding, and I don't know all the details. This is not my certainly my specialty, but CMS is working to find ways to specialize in care, find more options. I'm always going to stand on the side of transparency. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, not seeing things. Obviously, there may be issues with collective bargaining or whatever that all looks like for you folks, but I'll always stand on the side of transparency. That was a lesson I learned early on in working with government as the mayor of Savannah. But our seniors want some peace of mind, and we need to be able to provide that to them and some stability. They can't be, losing or having different plans every sign up, right?
Mm-hmm. I know that's an issue. It's seemingly at the end of every year, there's some hospital systems that say they're going to drop Aetna, and the retirees are getting a letter saying they may lose coverage. So I know for the SUAA members watching this, that this is on our minds, and we will be working with not only the Healthcare Availability and Access Committee, but as well as legislators as well to try to find solutions for you SUA members out there.
Yeah, people are not retiring when they're able to retire, even outside of your organization, but because of healthcare costs. Folks are having to work longer or not being able to retire with their spouse because somebody needs to carry the healthcare. And it's a real valid concern. I wish I had the answer. I wish it was that easy, but I'm hoping that both ways, on a federal level and a state level, that it certainly is a priority.
Well, moving on, it is the State Universities Annuitants Association. So getting into higher education, a bill we were following earlier this spring would allow for baccalaureate degrees from community colleges. So this member is asking, the bill did not leave committee in the spring session, but what is your opinion on Illinois community colleges offering four-year degrees?
Yeah, and it may be an answer you like or you don't like, but I initially sponsored a bill for Sauk Valley Community College They were set up to be able to offer nursing degrees. They had a great facility for it and had some feeder areas through Dixon and in the Sterling area where they could put these nurses right to work. And so I supported it back. This was in 2021 was my bill, but then I also co-sponsored Brad Fritz. Now, the bill, this was an initiative of the governor that the Democrats didn't get across the aisle for him this last year. Tracy Katz-Mull, Democrat, worked extremely hard on hearing all sides, all different views, but still had some pushback from some of her colleagues on that bill. And a bigger concern, I think, was well, we don't want to be hurting the university's population if this passes. Well, and I don't think this bill. There's certainly some guardrails in the way the language was written, and the representative Katz-Mull was very open to hearing all of that. I think eventually we'll get there. I mean, it's not a way for us to add degrees that are not going to help build the community. I think that's got to be the biggest factor. It's like, okay, what is the benefit for the surrounding community? Because a lot of people, for whatever reason, may not want to go to, Western, where I went, or, leave home to go and live. They want to be able to stay where they're at, work and go to school. And a community college oftentimes is able to offer that. And let's be honest, community colleges are typically more affordable than a 4-year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more feasible for them.
And in terms of people being closer to home, let's expand that out to our home state of Illinois. This member wanted to know, what are you or the General Assembly doing to keep higher education for the citizens of Illinois, including many of us who work at universities and community colleges, affordable, as well as to minimize the number of students attending college out of state?
Not enough. Not enough, Thomas, to be quite honest. A lot of my friends as kids are going to school now, and to go out of state at a similar rate for out of district, out of state tuition being very similar to ours, seems quite a bit. I mean, to have to go to a friend of mine's going to Illinois State right now, their daughter in Illinois State, $30,000 a year. And she's not involved in sororities or anything. $30,000 a year for a state school. That's a big problem. Now, one of our members, my deputy leader, Noreen Hammond, was on the higher ed committee for years and really been an activist for the AIM High program. And this is a program that initially started with $35 million and has proven to be effective to help students here in Illinois. And now it's increased funding of, I believe it's 50 million now annually. So that, programs like that, they're going to help us outshine districts or schools outside of our state by cost, and good programs, I think is the way to go. But it's really, quite honestly, Thomas, it's about affordability. And that's the biggest consideration more times than not, that's how people are choosing their schools. And we can't make the schools in Illinois for our students less feasible.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of, we've talked about trying to retain the students here in the state. Similarly, this member wants to know, what, if anything, are the legislators doing to work with university and community college presidents to retain top talent at our institutions, the employees? I figure it's probably very similar to the process of trying to keep students here in the state.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit different of well, maybe not. I mean, to make it more affordable, growth is always the answer. You have more people attending the school. You have higher outcomes for the school. I think you're going to have obviously more professors and folks going to that school. We talk to colleges, at least I do, and I know a lot of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle talk to and visit universities all the time and listen to their ideas. Oftentimes you hear costs are around different mandates or requirements, but it's also about the quality of life. If you're going to be going to Northern Illinois University, for example, is a spouse also going to be able to work in that area? It's not going to be like ISU, to come back to that, where Bloomington is, has the university there, but also has, large manufacturing and different things. So it's probably easier to attract families. So it really stems around, in my opinion, growth. If we have areas that have higher growth, higher opportunities, higher quality of life, and to be honest, the policies that we pass here in Illinois don't always promote a better quality of life, but more of a costly quality of life. So I think it's a much bigger picture than just offering a nice facility, a good pay, good benefits package. It's the overall package. Even if, they have kids that are still in the school system on elementary or junior, senior high, are those good schools with good outcomes? I mean, you're shopping for your kids, not just for yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
I would argue that a professor is going to take a less paying job if it is going to be more beneficial for their spouse and their family.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not just the university or the facility, it's just the general quality and health of the state as well. Another huge issue for us, pensions. So what is the outlook for funding for the SURS pension system? How is that looking going forward?
Yeah, I think we need to distinguish the difference between the funding, the unfunded liability, and funding the pensions. And we are, knock on wood, I hate to even say it out loud, we've been paying the pension bill. Obviously, over the years, there's been several pension pension holidays that
Yeah.
weren't paid, right?
Mhm.
But the Edgar ramp is still going strong, and it looks like the unfunded will be at 90% by, 2049? I had to look at my notes. Now, is 90% the magic number? I'm going to put on a municipal hat from when I, had to worry about taking money from the General Revenue Fund in Savannah to pay pensions. And, when you're spending every year 20, 21, 22, 23, now 25, 26% of your General Revenue Fund to hit this ramp, I don't know that 90% is the number, right? I mean, if I start today in a profession, do I need to be 90% funded tomorrow? Probably not. I don't, that was before my time, so I don't know where that magic number came from, but I think in a lot of cases it's very difficult outside of the state, even whether it's for municipalities, fire, police. It is difficult, and we're all in that same situation. But I think we're on a path with SURS that we're okay right now. I certainly don't think there's going to be any changes that is going to promote any additional holidays. But I don't have a magic ball to say.
There's no crystal ball.
Yeah, or the magic 8 ball or the crystal ball, whatever you want to call it, to say that, there isn't going to be some priorities that may be more important to the legislature today, and we can, put off what we need to be spending for tomorrow. That I will certainly never support that. I think we have to, I know we have to stick with our promise of paying the pension bills and making sure our pensioners have that money in their funds. Is there a better way? I think it was under Rauner, but I always call it the Mark Batnick bill because it was his idea. And that was for the buyout. That offered to take down some of that unfunded liability, right? Some say, well, why don't we do a 401k style retire? Okay, well, let's talk about that. How are you going to fund because today's workers are funding the pensioners, right? So how are you going to fund a new system? Where are you going to get all of that money to dump in there and still fund the other? So even if it's a a good idea, or even if it's a great idea, it's about how do you make that happen? And I don't think in the way our state fiscal outlook is right now, that can even be on the table.
Still with pensions, but also a fiscal issue. This member wants to know, what is your position on fixing Tier 2 pension issues for public employees, which includes educators? I know there was a Tier 2 bill that was sponsored by Representative Jay Hoffman towards the end of session. It did not get out of committee. Doesn't look like the Tier 2 issue will be going away in terms of recruitment and retention. And what can we do to make it more equivalent, if we should, make it more equivalent to Tier 1? Leader McCombie, what are your thoughts in general about Tier 2 pensions and any reforms you would or would not support?
Yeah, the question is, what's the fix, right? What does one person think is a fix compared to the next person? For me, the immediate fix is the safe harbor issue. That's something that has to be done immediately. They should have done it when they knew it was wrong, back in the day. However, politically, anything that we do to increase benefits, or even this, which is a fix, not anybody's fault that's well, maybe there's some that were in the legislature then, but certainly not my fault. I wasn't there then. But we have to make sure to fix that safe harbor issue right away. Now, the governor did put $75 million in the budget as a line item for those one-offs. That's certainly a Band-Aid. It's certainly not the fix. But the other piece of that, does it make sense for, teachers to be working until they're, 67 years old?
67, yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly open to having conversations on that rollback. That's probably not very popular, and it would be seen as a pension sweetener. But I think there should be some consideration for that. I think we should have conversations, and and if it's feasible, can we do that? But I think certainly the number one priority is that we have to have the safe harbor fixed. And also we have to look at, is pensions a concern for a new graduate, 22, 23? Are they thinking about their pension when entering the field? I don't know if they're thinking about their pension at that age. I don't know if you remember. I certainly
Probably
wasn't
not.
Yeah, but I was thinking about, oh my gosh, if I have to do this job until I'm 67, that is so old. And now it's like, it's not that old at all, in the scheme of things as we get older. But we have to make sure that we're not making it more difficult for recruitment and for retention to stay in the field, because we have people in the government right now that will be like, you know what, I'm a Tier 1, and I don't care what you do with me. Stick me in a cubicle, let me have my time out, I'll do whatever, I'm not leaving. Tier 2, they're like, you know what, this isn't gonna pay off for me in the end. I'm just gonna put into my own retirement, and I'm gonna do my own thing. That's valid, and that is happening. So we have to make sure that we do at least address that. Now, politically, Thomas, I don't think that you're going to see a real fix until lame duck. You're going to see a big turnover this cycle. So lame duck is in January of right after election, and we go back in January for lame duck. We have a lot of people in the House and in the Senate retiring, and that's when they pass, you find, tax increases or pension sweeteners typically. So I don't think legitimately you're going to see a fix until January of 2027.
Yeah.
Because of the politics of it.
Well, yeah, so that's what happens in election years. We don't want to take any hard votes, but once those elections are over, then you can kind of get to some of those more controversial issues. We've got a little less than 10 minutes here, so let's get to some Leader McCombie issues. This member wants to know, as leader of the Republican caucus in the House, what do you consider your top accomplishments, and what do you see as your top current priorities?
Well, certainly a top priority and or an accomplishment would be to hold the majority accountable. We are in a position where we have 40 Republicans out of 118. Some of your members may have heard about the gerrymandering of maps. Certainly, that has brought a big imbalance in state government, which is not good for Republicans, Democrats, or independents to have that big of it. And I would say this, I'm right next to Iowa, same thing, right? When you have that big of an imbalance. I wish it was reversed a little bit, but so we spend a lot of time exposing and opposing bad policy, whether that's that directly due the cost of living, tax hikes, energy costs, education cost, and that comes through mandates and different things, property taxes. So we spend a lot of time doing that, really paying attention to procedural ways that we can stop legislation or at least try to get more debate on the floor so we can have our colleagues on the other side of the aisle that are listening, like, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe we should pull the bill. We spend a lot of time doing that. But obviously, also for me, when I became the leader 3 years ago, it was important for me that I didn't want the Republican Party in Illinois to be known as the party of no. And so we are often, almost always, except for just one, most recently a couple weeks ago, the Democrats have their own working groups, and that never used to be the way. They were usually bipartisan, oftentimes bicameral working groups, and those days have kind of gone to the wayside. So we also have our working groups where we can talk about economic growth, the cost of living, good educational outcomes. So we can at least say, hey, you know what, we disagree with this policy, but here's our idea. And sometimes by putting them out there, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle take them up and run with them, which good policy is good policy. We don't really care how they get passed. So I would say that is probably the most important thing. And I'm very proud, even though we're small, we're mighty. We have, like I said, we have 40, but we're the caucus that represents parts of all 102 counties. And I think that's really important because good policy, especially in how diverse our state is. And I'm not talking in demographics. I'm talking geographically. We are very diverse.
We got 5 minutes left here. This one is specific, so I don't know if you can answer it in 5 minutes. There were a couple questions I wanted to get to, but I do want to make sure I get to this one. This member says you introduced HR 112 related to no taxes on retirement income. Can you provide some background for why you introduced that? Do you think there's a push in future sessions to tax retirement income? And what are your thoughts about taxing retirement income slash pensions?
Yeah, I'm opposed. I'm opposed to that. And even Iowa recently has changed their law to not tax retirement either. It really came about during campaigning time. You had a constitutional officer say, "Well, hey, we've got this bucket that we could tax and generate more revenue for the state of Illinois." And then you've seen other Democrats come forward with legislation to tax retirement. That should make people nervous because they're in the majority. And in the House, they need 60 votes to pass that. And that's a requirement of Speaker Welch. They have to have 60 Democrats before a vote's even called. So I oppose and will continue to be opposed of that. But the idea came from the words of Democrats, and that makes me very hesitant and leery. So I filed the resolution to be very clear on my view.
Want to thank all of our SUAA members for their questions. This is the last one with just a few minutes left. Speaking of working with the other party, Democrats, this member says, in an era where many want to focus on issues dividing the state and the country, can you talk about how you work with members across the aisle?
Yeah, I pick up the phone and call. I invite conversation. I know in today's world, collaboration and conversation seems to be dirty ideas. But just today, concerning the Safety Act, I called a colleague on the other side of the aisle to talk it through. Real good advocacy with Kelly Cassidy when it comes to victims' rights. There's several members over there that socially, and a lot of policies I disagree with. There's no question. But the best thing that we can do as individuals is find, okay, where do Thomas and I align? Where can we agree? And let that be the start of the relationship, the friendship. And you do see that less. I think the policy, the procedures in the House, where what I just talked about, the speaker requires 60 Democrats before you even have a bill called. That doesn't promote conversations across the aisle. Is that the point? I don't know that answer, but it's not effective for good policy or for conversation. So for me, I've just always led with, if I want an answer, if I want a question or a policy to talk it through, I just pick up the phone or go meet them at their desk or invite them to my office, have those conversations. They're not always easy. And sometimes it's hard because maybe I was just called a name or just attacked or called out on the floor. To be in this business, you have to let that stuff go to get good policy passed. So I'm going to keep doing that. Whether, my constituents, on the far right think it's the best thing or not. I think it's important as the leader that I have an open door policy and that I have everybody feel welcome to come into my office to discuss hard issues. And I'm going to continue to do that as the leader.
Well, Leader McCombie, I know we have to let you go now. So in terms of discussing issues, thank you for discussing our issues. Thank you so much for answering our questions. Thank you to our SUAA members for sending in your questions. Leader McCombie, thank you so much. Hope to do it with you again. But until then, thank you so much for your time. You have a fantastic day. And SUA members, we look forward to doing this again in the future. And we'll let you know when we have the next video on our series. So thank you, Leader McCombie.
Thank you very much, and we can get those other questions next time.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.